Good morning. It's the morning after the night before. Probably one of the best heavyweight fights we've seen in many, many, many decades. And in order for it to be such a great fight, it always has to have, it takes two. So Wilder played his part in what was a fantastic fight. You're here with Zaid Kahoot in Kahuts Corner, with a little bit of a breakdown analysis of what I think went down yesterday. First of all, I'm not going to go and repeat everything that I've seen in other videos. People have gone on and on about how amazing Tyson Fury is, how much heart Deontay Wilder showed, which is all true. 100%. We know that it was one of the best fights we've seen. But you know, if we're gonna, out of all the comments that have been made, one of the comments that I think is really relevant and people haven't really focused on is something Tim Witherspoon said. And he said that there's no way Deontay Wilder and his coach, Scott Malik, should have been sharing so many videos. And I 100% agree with him, because in any business, you shouldn't let other people know your business until the deed is done. Now, before the fight last night, I knew, having seen the training footage and the comments and everything, I knew that Deontay Wilder was going to go to the body. He was going to jab to the body, he was going to hook to the body, and that was going to be his strategy to try to keep Tyson Fury at bay, try to keep them right hand leads at bay, try to keep him out of range with the jab. And to be all honest, it was working perfectly. In the first round, it was working perfectly. But then what happened? What happened was, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. And the saying that everyone has been repeating again and again and again, everyone has a plan until they get hit. Now, Tyson Fury, he was a bit taken aback in the first round because the tactics were working perfectly. But Team Fury will have been aware of those tactics before the fight even started. He was a little bit taken aback. He made the necessary adjustments, the feints, and then he started working his way in behind the jab and right hand, and to catch Deontay Wilder. Deontay Wilder was absolutely, determined to move forward, to grind forward, and every time Tyson Fury would get him on his heels, he would realize that he's been put on his heels, and bless him, he tried. He tried really hard to get back on the front foot to try to come in behind the right hand, but it's telegraphed when he cocks that right hand and he gives that look in his eyes. Tyson Fury's are forewarned that he's coming forward, and Tyson Fury did very well to avoid most of them. And like he said himself, if you play with fire long enough, the chances are you're going to get burnt. Now, to have done so many rounds with one of the biggest punches in history, it was inevitable that at some point he was going to get caught, and get caught bad. And it's amazing, we've seen it with Tyson Fury throughout his career. He's been knocked down, he always gets up, and he always finds a way to win. And that quality is a quality of greatness, overcoming adversity. Like I said before, he's always been in hard fights and taken on fights before he was, or should have been, ready for them. The fight with Big John McDermott, the first was extremely tough, and it was perhaps a little bit soon for him. He thrashed him in the rematch. The fight with Derek Chisora for the British title was a little bit too soon, but he thrashed him in the rematch. The fight with Vladimir may have been a little bit too soon, but he won, and he never had the rematch. The first fight with Deontay Wilder was far too soon after such a long layoff, but he rose to the occasion, and he won that fight despite what the judges called. The second fight was perfect. That wasn't too early, but he certainly won it. And this is the icing on the cake. Icing on the cake, not the icing on the cap, as Lennox Lewis has said. The icing on the cake to what was a fantastic trilogy. Tyson Fury keeps getting asked the question, how would you have gone down in history? How would you have gone down in history and compared to other greats? And obviously he's a modest champion, and he's going to say, no, look, I'm not going to compare myself to X, Y, and Z. As long as I'm accepted as the greatest in my era, that shall suffice for me. But the reality is, and he's right, it's not for him to say, it's for other people to say, other boxing pundits and observers to say. And I would say, in my respected opinion, that Tyson Fury could potentially have been any other heavyweight in history. When he talks about times of Jack Dempsey and Jack Johnson, they were physically a lot smaller than the heavyweights we have now. They were skillful. They had all the qualities what it takes to be great. But Tyson Fury has got those qualities and the size. Um, he potentially could have beaten any heavyweight in the world, and it's not a disrespect to anyone. Um, I would say that he would have had a better chance of beating Mike Tyson than Lennox Lewis did. Lennox Lewis fought Mike Tyson when Mike Tyson was not at his peak, and I really feel if Mike Tyson boxed Lennox Lewis when he was at his peak, he would have had a greater chance of being successful against Lennox Lewis, more successful against Lennox Lewis than he would have against Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury would have tip-tapped with the jab, stayed at range, pivoted, keep changing direction, like what he did with Derek Chisora in their rematch. So absolutely fantastic what we witnessed last night. Enjoyed the ride. What's going to happen? I think AJ is going to win the rematch. Fury won't be fighting Usyk anytime soon. Usyk and Fury would be a real chess match, and because Usyk would force it to be a chess match, and Tyson would force it to be a very physical fight. But I really think AJ is going to come back and beat Usyk. And Wild, I hope he has a nice break and takes the time and rebuilds and doesn't quit from here, because I still think he's got a lot to offer. Those punches would have knocked anybody else out, and he certainly has a lot to offer, and he can continue improving with Malik Scott. It's difficult to Rome wasn't built in a day. They made a lot of changes. They made a lot of positive changes. One thing that wasn't positive was the extra weight. Everyone knows that his weight was his ideal fighting weight is his ideal fighting weight. Adding on extra poundage was like actually wearing that entrance costume throughout the whole fight. He didn't need to be carrying that extra weight. I don't think it benefited him at all. His power would remain the slight half a stone less. I don't think he would lose that power. And that's just my view from Kahuts Corner. I hope you all enjoyed it. Thank you very much. Good night.